Hello! Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome for the first time. My name is Josh, and here we talk about books. We talk about all things related to literature, and reading, and writing, and anything that is in the literary space. In today's video, what we're going to be doing is wrapping up what I read in December. I love wrap-up videos. This is where I get a lot of my inspiration from, of books that I want to read. I find it really interesting to see what kinds of literature people are consuming. It's just a lot of fun. I really like wrap-up videos. So these are going to be some videos that I will be doing on a monthly basis. So as my first wrap-up video, this will be a wrap-up for December 2023. This month is kind of interesting because it was basically the month of finishing up books that I had started long ago. I'm pretty sure I started reading all of the books that I finished in December closer to the beginning of 2023. So December really was a wrap-up for me. It wrapped up the year. I wanted to finish the books that I had already started so that I could start the new year, 2024, fresh and without the burden of books that have been read, or that have been in the process of being read, rather, for months and months and months. I don't know about you, but when I've been reading a book for that long, I get quite discouraged. I mean, if I'm reading a book for longer than a week, sometimes I get discouraged. If it's in another language, it feels a little bit different because that typically does take me longer. But if it's in my native language, or even in French, which is a language I'm more comfortable reading in, man, I want to finish that book up as soon as I can because I just like to gobble up stories, and I find it fun. And if I am stuck in a story for too long, because, life happens and, or you get distracted, I don't know, I just kind of get a little impatient. So, A, I'm working on that impatience, and B, I want to put myself in a good position this year so that I do not have multiple books on the go. I want to have, one or two books at a time, nothing more. Preferably one book. That being said, December 2023 started out with a book that I had not been reading. It was a children's book by Hilary Duff, actually, called My Little Sweet Boy. This is the companion picture book to My Little Brave Girl, which she wrote about her young daughter entering the world and exploring the world and learning to be courageous and standing up for herself and to not be afraid when she's in certain situations that make her feel inferior. It really spoke about some important topics related to the female experience, and that's essential to talk about. It should not be taboo like it has been. It is very important to discuss. However, I felt like that book was not as good as this book in that it did not dive deep enough into the topic in order to fully discuss something more rounded. And I know it's a picture book, so it's supposed to be a little bit more lighthearted and also capture the attention of the child. But that is why I like children's literature, because you are able to do that in a strategic way. And the way certain authors do that is so impressive and beautiful and often, in some cases, poetic. So when I read My Little Sweet Boy, I was not disappointed. I actually gave this 4 out of 5 stars because it talked about how this little boy who is based off of her son, is going to grow up and be a member of society. He might find himself in situations that are difficult. He might find them stressful or sad or joyful or full of love or full of loss. And she basically encourages him to express himself, to express his emotions, and to not be afraid of doing so, which I thought really spoke to toxic masculinity, which I think is so incredibly important to talk about because it affects everyone, not only boys and men and males, but everyone. Absolutely everyone. I think that this book did a fantastic job talking about something that is so serious and something that is so rampant. In a lighthearted and sweet way that was encouraging and loving and yet realistic. I think she did it a little bit better in this book than in her previous book. Her previous book just lacked a little bit more depth, whereas this I felt like had that depth. I also really appreciated the fact that the illustration, like the companion book, featured children of varying races and cultures. I thought it made it more universal, which was very much needed because this concept is definitely universal. It's not something that is only experienced in the United States. It is experienced all over the world in many different cultures. This book was certainly a joy to read. I highly encourage it if you have children, and even if you don't have children, check it out. The pictures are beautiful, they're cute, they are full of adventure, and the story is quite meaningful and intentional. The next book that I read is one of those books that I had been trying to finish. This book I actually originally saw the year prior, in 2022, called The Matzo Ball by Jean Meltzer. This book, oh, it's so good. I feel like it could be a movie. And I really want it to be a movie. I don't often want books to be movies because I feel like movies often wreck books, or they just become a whole different species, and it's really not the same. Sometimes they're not even in the same family anymore. But I really want to see this made into a movie, specifically by Adam Sandler. So, I know you're watching my content, Adam. Please make The Matzo Ball into a movie. The Matzo Ball is this delightful rom-com which is about this Jewish girl who is the daughter of a famous rabbi in New York. She feels a lot of shame for her position in society because as the daughter of this rabbi, she is expected to be ultra-Jewish, so to speak, but she is not in her own mind because she is obsessed with Christmas. She's obsessed with everything that is Christmas, all the magic, all the love, all traditions, and also the commercialism. Everything to do with Christmas she adores. She finds it a beautiful fantasy world which she can escape into from her problems. As such, she has developed a career off of her love for Christmas because she is a famous Christmas romance author, and nobody knows in her family. And she's very wealthy, and she lives in New York, and she's able to afford a very nice place, which kind of makes her family question what she's doing behind closed doors. But unfortunately, she gets a message from her publishers that say that they do not want to move forward with her Christmas success. They want to diversify it and make her do something Hanukkah related. Even though she is Jewish and she is the daughter of a famous rabbi, she does not know how to do that. So she needs to do some research, and she does so by trying to find a way to get into what's called the Matzo Ball, which is the biggest Jewish event of the year, and it is organized and hosted by her former camp rival when they were kids. So there is an enemies to lovers trope here, which I don't hate, but I did find it a little juvenile at times. It did create an interesting dynamic, and it brought up the theme of perspectivism, which I thought was really interesting too. I wish it dived a little bit further into that. It kind of glossed over it a little bit, but it did introduce it briefly, so that was nice. Something else that is really interesting is that the main character has a disability, which is one of the reasons why she became an author, because she could actually work from home. She actually has chronic fatigue syndrome, which she despises the name of because to her it does not sound like a real condition, but it certainly is. And she talks about those symptoms and experiencing that throughout her life in the book, which I thought was really cool because that kind of character development and character roundedness doesn't often exist in rom-coms, and this one had it. The next book here is a book that I started reading, I think, January of 2023. This particular book is called Toutes ces choses qu'on ne s'est pas dites by Marc Levy. This particular book is about this woman who has a bad relationship with her father. She is about to get married, and on her wedding day, she finds out that her father has died. So she has to go to the funeral. I can't remember if she plans it or not, but she has to go to the funeral, and she just kind of feels like, of course, he would die on my actual wedding day. That's so like him. So she's not very pleased about things, but she ends up going to the funeral, and then she comes back home to her place, and she finds this human-sized package, which she opens, and her father's inside. And he tells her that they have about a week or so to mend their relationship before he disappears. So we have this really fun magical realism element to this book. There's also some romance. I didn't really like the romance in this book. I wish that it went without it because I just found it really stereotypical and I didn't really like it. And I really dislike books that have affair tropes. And this one isn't exactly an affair trope, but it is. So it just did not speak to me. I really did not appreciate it. I just wish it was a little bit more original, especially since it kind of reminded me of another book by his called Ghost in Love, which is an English title, even though the book's written in French, so that's peculiar. And that book was kind of a similar premise, where that one is about a man who is helping his dead father, who's a ghost, find his long-lost love, and they kind of go on a trip together. This one's kind of similar, only this one is about a woman who helps this mysterious father figure after he's dead, but he's not a ghost, and they go on a trip together. So it's just kind of not the best, but I did generally enjoy it. I might give it 2.5 out of 5, but I don't know, I feel like that's a little bit harsh. 3 is good. The next book that I read is quite the surprise to me, because I really don't like reading big books. They kind of freak me out. And this one is a very big book, and it took me an entire month to read it, and it is Dune, the first one by Frank Herbert. This one has a movie out on, I believe it's on Netflix now in Canada anyway. I remember first being introduced to this book when I was in 5th grade many moons ago, and it didn't seem interesting to me back then, but then I saw the trailer of the movie and I thought, well, this kind of looks good. But then I wanted to read the book because I get curious, and I just want to explore that curiosity when it comes to reading and literature. So I got the book. This book really surprised me. And the reason why is because it was a joy to read. I thought it would be kind of, difficult to read, and that I would have to drag myself through it, because I heard from a lot of different people that the world building was too much and they couldn't handle it. I'm not a person who reads a lot of fantasy, especially not high fantasy, and I did not find this to have much world building at all. I thought it was sufficient, actually. I did not think it was too much. I did not think it was extreme. I did not think that it was overwhelming in the slightest. In fact, I found it kind of realistic. And I know it's strange, because this particular story, if you're not familiar, is about this boy who is basically being called by prophecy to save the people of his planet. I found this book quite interesting because I feel like it is clearly influenced or inspired by the Bible. It takes place in a deserty place, which really reminds me of the locations in which the Bible takes place, like Egypt and Jordan and Israel. I also found that the conversation of having a prophecy or multiple prophecies, and these prophecies coming true with this one boy, and how he's there to save the people, and they refer to him as the Messiah, I thought that was also very much reflective of the Bible. Even the conversations of spice, the conversations of war and attacks, and how each chapter opens up with a type of scripture from the prophets or from the holy works of this particular people or of a princess. I thought that was very reminiscent of the Bible as well. So I just felt like so many things really came together that reminded me of Christianity, that reminded me of the Bible. I thought it was really fascinating how very cinematically written, I thought. When a kid says, I don't want to go to bed yet, just one more chapter. I kind of felt like that while I was reading this, which was really cool. So I definitely recommend Dune, and I'm actually excited to read the second one. I think I'm going to. So that is something that I'm looking forward to this year. So for Dune, I gave 4 out of 5 stars. The next book here is The Vibrant Years by Sonali Dev. This I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This one here, it came on my radar because of Mindy Kaling's new imprint. And I love Mindy Kaling, so I thought, man, this is going to be good. I started reading it. It was okay. And then I just got bored. It became dry, and I just really wasn't into it. And so it kind of took me all year to read it, because I just found other books more interesting. The reason why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars is because I still enjoyed the second half of it. I think I read maybe like 30-40%, and then I got bored, and then I dropped it. And then many months later, I picked it up again, and every so often I'd read a chapter here or there. And then in December, I just decided I would go through it, and I read like 60% or whatever it was that I had left. The story is about 3 generations of women, a granddaughter, a mother, and a grandmother, who are all single, and they all want to find love. So they decide to find love together. And the story is quite interesting in that regard. I like that. But I didn't like how each chapter was a different perspective. It would go from, the granddaughter's perspective in one chapter, the next chapter would be the mother, after that would be the grandmother, and then we go back to the granddaughter. And sometimes it didn't do that, so there wasn't even an expected pattern or rhythm, and so it just kind of got confusing. And I know at the beginning of each chapter it says the name of the character, so you know whose perspective you're about to read. But I also just found it really, really confusing because you just forget, after a few chapters what happened or what was going on because you get invested in this other person's story. And I'm just not a fan of changing perspectives. And I know this is a really common element of literature in fiction, but it's just not one of my favorite formats. And this book was structured according to that format, so it didn't really appeal to me in that regard. I would say that the ending was quite good. I appreciated the ending, not because it ended, but because it was unexpected, and I kind of like that. The characters do seem different, which is nice, so they are well-rounded, and the writing is good. But it's just nothing fantastic, nothing really notable. So I give it 3 out of 5. Anyway, so those are the books that I read in December of 2023. All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, which is pretty good for me. I don't often read that many per month, so it's nice to get 5 done. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming here. Let me know in the comments below what you read in December of 2023. I'm excited to check them out. I'm also really excited to read some new books that are coming out in 2024, books that have been on my TBR for quite some time. I have quite a few ideas, so make sure that you check back, watch the videos, and let's just keep chatting about books. Until next time, take care. Bye for now. Oh, and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free.